6 years. So it was 6 years ago tonight, that the first To Write Love on Our Arms t-shirt was worn by my friend Jon Foreman from the band Switchfoot. But it was actually March 4th, 2006 that the idea for the t-shirts happened. That was at a Coldplay show in Orlando, Florida, and they were on the X and Y tour at the time. And I guess I got swept up in the whole thing. Renee had just entered treatment. I had just written the story. And at the time, there was no idea of starting a charity or starting a movement. But I sat through this show and I guess smiled for a couple hours and sang Fix You and wanted to be friends with Chris Martin, and somehow walked out of this show committed to these two ideas. And one of those was just the idea of printing and selling t-shirts to raise money for Renee's treatment. And the idea was the t-shirts should be black, and that was because the band was wearing black at the time. And we would put the title, the words, on the outside in white, and that was because their shoes were white at the time. So it was some very deep stuff that this all grew out of. There was this Coldplay show, but it was also right after the movie Walk the Line. And a couple weeks before I met Renee, I actually had the chance to watch Joaquin Phoenix direct a music video. And I remember he had these words scribbled on his arms, and as he got closer, I actually realized those were his ideas or his notes for the shoot, for the video. And I didn't get to meet him, I didn't get an explanation, but that was something that just really stayed with me. And it seemed a bit brave or a bit rock and roll that he was comfortable. You know, he didn't care that people could see his arms. I think he knew that. And I guess going back to the Johnny Cash connection, like Johnny Cash wore black because he said it was the most honest color. It was the color of the people. It represented the fact that life is really hard for a lot of people a lot of the time, and he wanted to play on behalf of those people. And so when it came time for us to design a shirt or order the first batch of shirts, it was hey, they need to be black. And then the first box of those t-shirts showed up at the Switchfoot concert in South Florida, and that was March 30th, 2006. And I was standing next to my friend Jon Foreman, who's a friend but also one of my heroes to this day. And we opened this first box of t-shirts and you know, pull out the first one, and I'm seeing it for the first time, and Jon is there, and he just says, "Man, this is great. Would it be okay if I wore this on stage?" And you know, so he puts on this black To Write Love on Our Arms t-shirt, and Switchfoot plays their show that night. And as a side note, 2006 was a huge year for these guys. They had a song called Meant to Live that was one of the biggest songs in the world that year. It came off an album called The Beautiful Letdown. And because of that, they're in town to play to about 3,000 people at a college in South Florida. And so, you know, somewhere in the middle of the show, in the middle of their set, Jon just says, "Hey, a buddy of mine is working on this project. It's called To Write Love on Our Arms, and you can find more about it on the internet." And I remember thinking, man, that's kind of a missed opportunity. Like, that's not a great plug. You got to give an address. You got to give more information. But I was proven wrong, because I had about a 3-hour drive home that night and sat down at the computer and looked at the MySpace page we had made, and there were all these messages from people that had been at the concert. People just saying the story we were telling was their story. It was the story of a friend. It was the story of someone they had lost. It was the story of someone they cared about that was really struggling. And I guess over the last 6 years, we've just heard from people all over the world that are living a similar story. People struggling with issues like depression, addiction, self-injury, suicide. It happened by accident, and it feels so much bigger than me. I meet people who say they're still alive because of this work that we do. I meet people that have our logo tattooed on their body. So this was that first shirt. We call it our title, because at the time it was simply our title. It wasn't meant to be a logo. It wasn't something, you know, we thought would be around years later. Initially we ordered 200 of these t-shirts, and that was just to try to raise money to help Renee get through treatment. Even I think with the colors and the design, like there was, I don't know, there was this idea of almost like starting a gang, you know, but hopefully the good kind, and this sense that we would be in it together, and I loved that it was meant to be provocative. It was meant to cause people to ask questions, and I think the thing I love about it is, you know, when someone asks, "What does your t-shirt mean?" it's not just a chance for someone to tell our story, the To Write Love on Our Arms story, but it's a chance for them to tell their story. And I think I love that both of those things happen and have happened so many thousands of times around the world in the last few years. And it's been really cool to see that.